everyone. This is Dave Dubeau with another episode of the Property Profits Real Estate Podcast. Today, zooming in all the way from beautiful Calgary, Alberta, we've got Mr. Darcy Marler, who is a very accomplished real estate entrepreneur. He's an author. I believe Darcy's got 4 books under his belt. Yeah. He's a trainer, he's a coach, and his main focus these days on something very, very interesting, which is land development. So that's what we're going to be talking about here. Darcy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dave. Great to be back. This is nice.
It's nice to have you on the show. So Darcy, tell me a little bit, big picture. You've done a lot of different things with real estate investing. Why is land development what floats your boat in 2022?
2022. I'm just becoming a little bit of an evangelical or a prophet about the beauties of land development. I like it because I just think it's hitting everything kind of right at the right time. There's so much competition now all across the country for property, for normal rentals and flips. And as I talk to investors in that space, they're saying, if I can't buy stuff, I'm going to build it. So that's becoming a more and more topic, and I think that's going to be bigger in the next few years. The next big thing is immigration. We've been slowed down a bit, but the federal government's kind of just chomping at the bit to loosen the gates up again. So those people have to live somewhere, and so we need land for that. You're going to see there's already a kind of a housing crisis in Canada. Was a big thing in the last federal election. So you're going to see, I think, all 3 levels of government start to implement policies to increase inventory of housing, but also to increase densification. And certainly that's the big builders on the outskirts of town. They're going to go hard. But as smaller investors, we can actually do some stuff as well. We can, tear down a whole house and on a large lot and subdivide that into 2 or 3 units and get that ready for builders. There's other things we can do there. Just also the demographics. People don't like old buildings, right? Given a choice, people want to build in or live in new buildings. And so I really think you're going to see that inventory of 1920s, 1930s, 1940 houses, instead of being flipped or renoed or BRRRR'd, I think you're going to see a lot of that come down and replaced with a higher
get demolished and replaced, basically, right?
It should be, to be honest. I think the only reason we reno and BRRRR those is because we've got nothing else to do, referring to that competition I talked to a couple of minutes ago.
So Darcy, if you don't mind, when I think of, or when a lot of people hear residential land development, they might have an image of somebody buying a big tract of land out in the outskirts of town, land banking that for a few years, going through a gazillion hoops and whatnot to get that zoned properly, then doing all the rigmarole of getting the sewage and the electricity and city stuff all in there. It sounds like you're talking about something slightly different. Am I on the right track? Or
I call it, there's various micro strategies within land development that people aren't aware of. So there's certainly that, and you can do that on a smaller scale. Let's say 10 or 2 to 5 acres, put some pipe in the ground for servicing, a little internal road, subdivide it and sell the lot. So that's certainly doable for a smaller investor. Depending on where you are in the country, let's say that's $2 million. So if that's a little too rich, then you can step down and now you can go, I call it old house on large lots. So let's say there's a 1930 or 1940s building on a larger lot, 50, 60-foot lot. You can tear down that old building, subdivide that lot sever that lot into smaller units, make sure everything's serviced again and sell that. There's also, let's say you've got a property with a lot of excess land. You can sell the excess. With the original building, you can either sell that again and be completely done with the project, or you can tear that down and develop that, or you can apply the excess from the sale of the land towards the mortgage of the original property, and now that turns into a really nice cash flowing rental. You can assemble 2 or 3 properties together. We were just looking at something, a group I was looking with, there's some older homes in Hamilton, for example, that were really old and ready to, boarded up almost. They're like $200,000 per building. Well, you can afford to buy 4 or 5 of those for the price of one house in Toronto these days. So assembly is something else. So again, get 2 or 3 together, knock them down. But you can also do kind of just the paperwork. You can just change the zoning or the density. get the paperwork in place for that and sell that. You can just change the paperwork, get the permitting in place to get something shovel ready and sell that to a builder. So again, there's all these kind of little micro strategies within the grand envelope of land development that I think a lot of investors aren't aware of, that that's actually possible. And they can actually do it on various timetables and various pocketbook sizes as well.
Oh, that's very cool, Darcy. So what kind of land development deals have you personally been involved in most recently?
Basically, over my career, I've done a bunch of stuff. I've done new construction on 45 different houses and small apartments. In terms of lot development, I've done that old house on large lot. I've done that. I've done paperwork only. I've done larger or kind of mid-sized deals where 7.25 acres and developed 36 units, for example. And I was also instrumental, a main player in getting the horse track and casino built here in Northeast Calgary. So that was a really large project, 720 acres,
Wow.
a couple $100 million. So I go from small to large in my experience over the years.
Very cool. So walk me. I'm curious because I've got a client who has done one of those kind of strategies, primarily in the Ottawa area, and that is the ugly old house on a big lot,
yeah.
and getting that tied up and then doing all the paperwork and getting everything kind of shovel ready and then selling that to a developer. So can you walk, because to me that sounds like compared to some of the other options, more of a low risk, perhaps a good place to get started in the land development game. First of all, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Is that what you recommend for folks?
Yeah, I always kind of say, in general, not always, but I always say that if you can afford to buy that old house as a rental or a flip, you can afford to buy it for land development, because basically in an urban area, the services are going to be right on the street in front of you. And it's 15, 20,000, 25,000, depending what zone you're in, to get a service brought in from the street. A little bit of engineering. So you're typically sub 50,000 for doing that, which is, you couldn't do a reno for that. So it's about the same ballpark. So that's why it should interest people that are trying hard to find stuff to flip and rent, but can't find it. But yeah, it's basically the other big thing I'd warn about is there's a really big discrepancy from jurisdiction to jurisdiction across the country. Some will approve a development permit in a couple of months. Some, the worst is kind of Vancouver, where it's 1.5 to 2 years. So, and all in between 4 to 5 months, 8 months. Some places Ontario are still 14 months, for example. So the kind of where we start is always make sure you're in the right municipality where they're kind of pro development and they're not just a bunch of NIMBYs or they don't want any development at all. So that's kind of
right. Yeah, that'd be super important. And then, well, even if you are in kind of a NIMBY area, I would imagine, as long as you understand that going into the deal, B, that hopefully, so this is one of the cool things that client was doing. In the meantime, they were renting out the crappy old house on the property, and that was helping to cover their hard costs, at least. So they weren't going negative in the meantime. So is that one of the suggestions you have for people in this kind of scenario?
Yeah. So, and I tell, I use the analogy of getting in to the lake up to your ankle, up to your ankles, to see if it's going to work. Does this make sense? Because you don't control the land. Let's say you didn't control the land. So at a very high level, does this make sense? What are the revenue and costs going to look like? Is the city basically on board? And if it looks good, that's what I call decision point A. You're going to go a little bit further. Now I need to spend a little bit of money on engineering and some planners, some cost consulting to put some more meat on the bones, make sure you draw like a site plan or something that I can start to show potential investors, potential banks, again, highlight or get some more meat on the bones for revenue and costs. So now I'm up to decision point B, or up to my knees at this point. I can still back out. I haven't spent a ton of money. I do need to have control of the land before I do that.
Wow, that's another fantastic idea. Hold on to that thought for a sec. We'll be right back. Now, are you a real estate investor who's run out of cash or credit to grow your portfolio? Are you looking to grow your portfolio using other people's money and raising capital? Well, I want to show you how to raise 6 figures or more in 6 weeks or less at my upcoming Investor Attraction Workshop. You can get your ticket and find out all about it at investorattractionworkshop.com. We're going to spend a full day taking a deep dive into this roadmap that I've used to raise millions for my deals, and I've helped other people just like you cumulatively raise hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for their deals as well. So again, you can check that out at investorattractionworkshop.com. And as a loyal listener to the podcast, you'll get 50% off your ticket when you use the discount code podcast. That's right, discount code podcast at investorattractionworkshop.com. See you at the next workshop. So when you say get control of the land, are you talking about options to purchase, these kind of things? What are you talking about?
Yeah, ideally you don't, want to keep your costs as small as possible. So ideally you need to control it so the land can't be spent or sold out from under you while you're spending a little bit of money. So ideally, instead of actually buying it, you can do an option or agreement for sale, or even maybe partner with the seller itself is a great opportunity too. We always talk about JV partners in terms of a money partner. Well, what if the seller itself was one of your partners too? That's an option that again, not always available in a heated market, but certainly it certainly happens. So it's worth a talk with the seller.
Yeah.
So these kind of, and then once you're at decision point B, yeah, this looks good, we're all in. Okay, at that point now we're doing full construction drawings. We're basically spending all of the soft costs, and your team is doing most of the work too. So if you think maybe this whole thing is a little too hard for you, you're involved a lot at the beginning where you're putting the deal together, finding out if it works or not. But once you're to the point where you're designing and doing that, your team, your planner, your civil engineers are doing all the back and forth with the city, making sure everything's in place. And then you've got everything. You apply for the permits, they'll apply for that. Hopefully you get approved. And then if you're doing any on-site work, if you're not just doing the paperwork, but you're actually putting some pipe in the ground, then again, your professionals are doing that too. At that point, your role more becomes project manager, managing the money, making sure that your manager is billing you on time so you can get your construction draws and get the money back to them. So the trades are getting paid. So work isn't stopping on site. So it becomes you're lifting yourself up. I recommend doing the actual on-site work yourself. So
Right.
You're more project manager, thinking about it as a true investor as opposed to like a job or a business.
So obviously, Darcy, every deal is going to be different. I mean, there are so many moving pieces with this kind of a process, and different rules, different places, et cetera, et cetera. But if you could give us like some big, broad stroke ideas of, maybe a case study of yours or one of your students or somebody like that did one of these kind of smaller infill type deals, what could that look like from stage to stage, dollars and cents wise? So, you get into the property or get the property tied up for this, then the first stage is probably ballpark going to cost you, give or take, this much. At what stage have you actually added enough value that this could be packaged and delivered to an end user? And in that case, what might that look like? I know I'm asking for a lot here, but just to get people their juices flowing with the idea of what's in it for them for doing this.
I'll give you two. So there was a student actually here in Calgary, and just this last August, he was going to buy a house, tear it down, and then build a really nice house in its place. So typically you want to break that house or that lot into as many smaller lots as you can so that the original cost of the lot is proportioned as far as it can to the new lots.
Right.
Sometimes in a richer area, the play is knock down old house, build really nice house in its place. He was going to do that. He spent $650 on the original house. They were projected to make about $350. They knocked the house down, $350,000 profit. They knocked the house down. They were working with the architect, surveyors to get some of the work done. Somebody just randomly walked up and offered him enough to $850. He'd spent about $66,000 so far. So basically in 2.5 months, he sold it just as is, whereas paperwork only basically made $135,000 in 2.5 months.
Nice. Just because he got it tied up and somebody else saw the potential of what he was wanting to do and said,
yeah, because what happens is builders, they want to build. They don't want to deal with paperwork and bureaucracy. So just give me something so that I can get shovel ready and I can start work tomorrow. I got to keep my crews busy. They don't want to necessarily. And then another one I did just recently was in smaller town Alberta. I bought a $300,000 fourplex, and it's just by chance it had a bunch of land to the side. So it turned out it had a 50-foot frontage lot. So I did the paperwork to have that officially severed or turned into a new lot. I was able to sell that for $30,000. So $300,000, 20% down, $60,000 cash, $240,000, 80% loan to value mortgage, another $30,000 against the mortgage, turned that into a 70% loan to value. So it cash flowed before, now cash flowed really nicely after that. So again, if some of you are having trouble finding things to rent, properties that can rent, that might be a way to actually cash flow better, because you're severing this excess land and putting that against the mortgage. So there's another strategy.
Yeah, so you're taking a big lot, legally chopping it in half, selling the excess property, using the profit you made from that excess property to pay down the mortgage on the first one, if you want to, and increasing your cash flow because you've got a lot more.
So maybe the property itself, like I said, people are having a real hard time finding properties that cash flow. Maybe it's borderline cash flow as is, but once you sever and put down, now it actually cash flows positively, and you can continue your rental strategy going forward.
Very, very,
I've done
very
that a couple
cool.
of times too. So.
Yeah, no, that's exciting stuff, and I think you're absolutely right. Really, circumstances that we're in, not just in Canada but in North America. I mean, supply and demand. The prices of properties have gone crazy in a lot of areas of the country, that's for sure. So this is a way to squeeze some more juice out of those opportunities.
CMHC, you'd have heard of this too. CMHC just came out with a new thing that for new construction of apartment buildings, mostly for lower rental kind of property, really nice terms on the actual construction. But then if you turn around and try to refinance it, they'll refinance at 95% loan to value.
Wow.
With a 50-year amortization period.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's it's so basically they're saying, like, imagine how low your penalty, your monthly payments would be if you stretch it out over 50 years. So that's what they're trying to do for that. There's a couple of hurdles. It has to be, specifically for lower rental, and also there's some environmental hurdles that you have to have these days. But if you fit into that blanket, 95% loan to value, 50-year AM is huge. So you're going to see a lot of activity there, and people are going to need lots to build on that.
Well, they're incentivizing, lower income housing, right? They got to make it make sense for us financially as real estate investors. We're not just going to be doing that off.
Yeah, because there's a lot of carrot or the stick. They like to tax this or they like to penalize this, but on the other hand, I think they're going to have to come around to the realization that no, we need to. The big problem is it takes a year and a half to get a permit in Vancouver, not the fact that there's too many empty units in Vancouver. Like, let's speed that up, boys. So eventually you'll kind of see that come around, I'm sure. So, yeah.
This is fascinating stuff, Darcy. If people want to find out more about you and the whole land development thing, what should they do?
Basically, I'm online. Actually, and as part of the podcast here, I'll give you the URL that they can latch onto, and you can include that. But also, just you can DM me. My name's Darcy Marler, Marler. My webpage is hrrealestatementors.com. So, but there's a specific, I've created an actual online course now for residential land development as a profitable investment, where I teach people how to take advantage of this. And it's kind of actually the first course on land development that's really out there. And it's written for investors by an investor. So it's actually a really good course.
Awesome. Very good. Darcy, thanks so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. Good to see you.
Right. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode. Well, hey there. Thanks for tuning into the Property Profits podcast. If you like this episode, that's great. Please go ahead and subscribe on iTunes. Give us a good review. That'd be awesome. I appreciate that. And if you're looking to attract investors and raise capital for your deals, then I'm going to invite you to get a complimentary copy of my newest book. Right back there. There it is. The Money Partner Formula. You can get a PDF version at investorattractionbook.com. Again, investorattractionbook.com. Take care.